when the wives have given birth and they're busy with the child and the husbands have gone out and cheated. It's a very common pattern.
We have Aditi Chandanani out here with us, an award-winning mental health coach.
How many times have you heard a story of someone who's 35 years old, perfectly going to the gym, not smoking, not drinking, and has just died with a heart attack? The story is not becoming like uncommon now. It's becoming more and more common. Millennials have also not seen very happy marriages in our family. So the Gen Zs are like, dude, I'm gonna learn who I am. Like abusive relationships are always looked at as physical abuse. But there's so much to abuse. There is financial abuse, mental abuse, there's emotional abuse. Somebody attracts a toxic person into their life, it's because they know how to deal with that toxicity.
It's a very thin line between showing someone care
Yeah.
and that relationship being abusive.
And the perfect of perfect parenting is going to have mistakes and trauma in it. So you can't do anything about it.
Hey you, welcome to another exciting episode on Roar with Sneha. I am your host Sneha Desai, and Roar is the talk show about love and relationships. But before we go ahead, do not forget to hit that subscribe button because that helps us roar even louder. Today we have Aditi Chandanani out here with us, and she is an award-winning mental health coach. So let's welcome Aditi. Hi Aditi.
Hi Sneha, thank you for having me.
Yes, how are you?
I'm good. Quite excited to sit down here and decode.
Yes, I'm so happy you're here with us today. And you are a part of the most dynamic industry today, that is mental health.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah,
It's a very essential industry.
very essential, yeah. So क्या हो रहा है वहाँ पे? What do you think people are suffering?
With mental health in itself, I think people are still so confused about what is mental health. Because sometimes even when you go to an office and someone is like, oh, I'm not feeling good, then they'll be like, oh, do you have a temperature or do you have like a cough or cold or what is it? Sometimes you can just be like, I'm not feeling good from within, right? So a lot of people don't understand that. We have not given weightage to how are you really feeling. It's very, what is the thermometer saying or what are your cold and cough symptoms or, whatever your organs are saying. But no one's really like asked us about what your mind is saying, what your feelings are saying. So, and that has shown like a massive problem, especially with like the increase of the suicide rates, increase of heart attacks. How many times have you heard a story of someone who's 35 years old, perfectly going to the gym, not smoking, not drinking, and has just died with a heart attack? Like this story is not becoming like uncommon now. It's becoming more and more common. And the underlying of all of that is stress. And the underlying and decode all of that is mental health.
Yeah.
So now people are giving a little bit more importance to mental health. So yeah, so if we talk about it, yes, it's one of the most industries that is under recognized but overused in a way,
Yeah.
right? People are overusing the word without understanding it, which is fair. I'm okay with it. As long as you're using the word, we'll figure out, it'll take us a few more years to figure out the balance. So yeah, mental health is that.
Okay.
Us understanding our feelings and us understanding what's going on in our mind.
And what do you think? So, yeah, very rightly said that, we see so many articles talking about 35-year-olds committing suicide or having, so many issues. And if you see on the superficial level, आप अगर ऊपर से देख रहे हो तो they all are very successful. They have the money, they're hitting the gym, everything is right in place. What do you think is one factor that is actually increasing stress in today's life?
Actually, honestly, I want to say the cliche answer of social media, stuff that we're doing currently.
Yeah.
But that's too like wide. What I think I would want to say that is increasing stress is, I think we're just not happy with what we have. The world has grown so much, right? The opportunities have grown so much. So say, I mean, you were an influencer before. And now you're like, oh, now I can go into podcasting. So we have so many opportunities.
Yeah.
Same for me.
Yeah.
You know, I started off with a travel and tourism industry. Then I was like, you know what, I want to study more. I went into mental health. From mental health is like, I want to talk about it. So I'm now doing a podcast. And from podcast, obviously panels and this and that.
Yeah.
So you constantly want to grow, which is a good thing in retrospect. Like on paper, it sounds great. But where does it stop? You know, where do you tell yourself that I need to take a break, I can't stop, I don't need to constantly run, the world is constantly running. So we are constantly chasing something that we don't even know what.
Yeah.
We are just on a chase.
Yeah.
While we're chasing, we'll be like, yeah, I'll figure out what I'm chasing later.
Yeah.
But we're constantly on a chase, and that chase is the result of stress.
Yeah.
So stress is something like, okay, by the books, if we define stress, stress is when you are in fight or flight. Now, what fight or flight means is that you're in a situation where you feel like you cannot survive.
Okay.
Like it is life threatening and you cannot survive. So you either fight the situation or you flight from the situation. And that is what the actual definition of stress is. And we take stress for stuff like a recording, or we take stress for something like our clothes, or, you know, my makeup, or this person didn't respond to my email. But the definition was, are you going to die because of that? But you're not. But we still treat every situation like our life depends on it. And that's what's so scary. Because am I going to get stressed if my cook doesn't come? Like, is your life depending on it? Are you going to die? So yeah, that's the fight or flight situation.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what I was talking about. Stress is we take every situation in our life like it's life threatening and we are fighting or flighting, but that's not really that necessary. You need to like take certain situations in your life like it's actually like life threatening.
But why do you think, where is this problem? If you sort of decode the underlying issue, where is this taking stress for little things coming from, you know?
I feel like it's also a part of our upbringing that if you don't get it, then the other person will get it, and then that competition, and then it's kind of making us seem like our life is in a lack. There are lack of opportunities, there's lack of money. So if you get it, you need to run to it. You need to like achieve this first. You need to be the first person to have this podcast. You need to be the first person to be on the, you know, Forbes 30 under 30. You need to do it first.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are billions of people, yeah. There are billions of opportunities, right? Like, and I don't think we look at that. I don't think it's more about like the mindset. If you're in a lack mentality mindset, you're always going to be chasing. You're never going to be resting. So the opposite of fight or flight is rest and digest. So you're never going to be resting and digesting.
Yeah.
You're always constantly going to be on the move.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. I mean, I think most of us, it's also the problem of the abundance, I feel, because there is so much out there and you are always feeling the FOMO. The whole feeling that you will miss out on something is actually building up to so much stress. Do you think this also is sort of reflecting in our relationships?
Oh, absolutely. People are constantly like, people have like lists. Firstly, what? But they have lists of stuff that they want to do of like 24, I want to meet the perfect guy. It doesn't exist. And then 25, I want to get married. 28, I want to have a children. 30, I want to have my second child. And like this, firstly, life has to life.
Yeah.
You can't manufacture it. You can't plan it.
Yeah.
And some people who have planned it and it has worked out for them don't define your life based on someone else, firstly. So yeah, people are actually defining their life based on, okay, if I get like 2 children under 30, then I have all the energy and time to travel once I'm 35, 36 years old. That gives me 10 years to do all the other things that I wanted to do in life. So because there's so much to achieve, then you want to sit and define it. And once you define it and it doesn't go as per you, then you're annoyed with yourself. You're annoyed with the person that you've chosen. Then you're annoyed with life. And then that's when you're stressing.
Yeah.
And that's when you're just like, why me?
Why me? Yeah. Also, when you said about social media, that's so right. That also when you see people getting married on social media. So even if for you maybe getting married at 24 is not a definition, like maybe you do not feel that way, but maybe if I'm seeing 10 of my friends getting married at 24, 25, 26 and maybe they have the perfect life that is shown on social media, and suddenly after seeing those 10 people, I start feeling something change within.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because now you're just like, if everyone's doing it and I'm not doing it, then is the problem me?
Yeah.
Right? Because everyone seems to be finding love. Everyone seems to be compromising, adjusting, of being okay with it. I don't want to compromise. I don't want to adjust. I'm not the one getting married. I'm the one left out.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm the problem.
Yeah, maybe my life is not going right because I'm missing out on so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you start to self-blame. And from there, as you rightly said, FOMO comes in. And then you start making wrong decisions because of FOMO. So FOMO, again, is just a symptom. If we have to decode what FOMO is not having a purpose of life. You're only going to have the fear of missing out on something when you don't know what you're doing in life. You don't know which direction you're taking in life. If you knew your exact direction and there's a carnival happening on the side, you won't feel bad because you know what you're doing, you know what you're achieving, you know where you're going.
Okay.
When purpose is unclear, that's when FOMO hits you more.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. I mean, if I think about it, when you are working towards, like, it's like if I'm on my journey and if I know where I'm heading towards, what is my destination, then these little things are not going to affect me.
So say tomorrow you're traveling to Thailand
Huh.
and your flight is at 2 o'clock, at 12 o'clock there's a party, you will be like, no, it's cool, I don't want to go, I have a flight to catch, bro, I'm going.
Yeah. And I won't have a FOMO of somebody who's going to Vietnam for sure.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to Thailand. So I have my
Yours is
plan,
there, yeah.
travel plan is all sorted. Wow, that's rightly said. I think most of them are acting out of FOMO because there's a lack of purpose.
Okay. There's a lack of purpose.
And how do you think that this lack of purpose also is sort of showing up in our relationship somewhere?
So lack of purpose in relationships. So now even relationships, unfortunately, a lot of people are getting into relationships for the wrong reasons, which are like, I need companionship. I want someone to love me.
Yeah.
Or
Or I'm feeling lonely. Most of them. That's why you have this whole term
Companionship.
like situationship.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And companionship, feeling lonely, want to feel loved. And again, when I say wrong reasons, I'm also like, people just want kids. Arey, but you need to have kids. If you really want kids, then just do it outside the marriage. But then if you're getting married to someone just for kids, then you need to also pick the partner who's actually going to be a partner,
Yeah.
not just a sperm donor,
Yeah.
right? At the end of it. So people are again getting married for the wrong reasons. So when you say purpose in relationships, if you're not doing it for the right reasons, you're always going to encounter problems and you're always going to encounter toxicity, and then you're always going to encounter compromise. And all of this together, you're never going to be able to say that you are in a good relationship. And I feel like a lot of millennials have also not seen very happy marriages in our families. Not a lot of families are happy.
Yeah.
Not a lot of parents in our generation even it could be personal, it could be your friends, it could be your aunts, uncles, whatever. No one was happy because they also got married for a need to be married.
Yeah.
Right? And we saw how that worked.
Yeah.
And that's why also the Gen Zs are like, dude, I'm gonna learn who I am.
Yeah.
I don't need to do this.
Yeah.
So I think when purpose in a relationship, you need to figure out why you want to be in a relationship. You can only be in a relationship when you are completely satisfied with yourself.
Okay.
If there are lacks within you, you are going to have that expectation into that other person. So if you are unable to love yourself, you are constantly going to put pressure on your partner to show love, gestures, love letters, take me out, send me flowers. You're going to be expecting that love from them, which is not their duty to fulfill. You are 100%, he's 100%, together you're a wholesome. There's no 50-50. Don't complete me. No one wants that now. We're in 2024. I'm wholesome, you're wholesome, together we are wholesome.
But don't you think Bollywood has sort of taught us that you meet a guy and then he has to make complete your life sort of a thing. This heroine is waiting. She's suffering at her house with her parents, and
I can't
she's like, and when
Can we call Karan Johar and tell him how he has ruined our childhood.
Yeah, and then when you meet this perfect guy, and then there are these songs, there are these flowers, and there are dates and stuff like this that is happening in
I
the.
want to vomit just thinking about it. But see, okay, now again,
But is it bad to be romantic? I mean, like, see,
so
the romance.
that's not bad. No? Now we need to understand it, right? Now we need to understand where money comes from in this entire thing.
Okay.
Why do these movies sell? Because there is a lack of love, there is a lack of romance. So that's why these movies sell, because they're showing you that your life is also romanceless,
Huh.
and I am selling you romance. That's why those movies sold.
Yeah.
Now, when we're so satisfied with ourselves and we're like, we don't need a man to complete us, these movies don't sell anymore. Now we'll just be like, what is he doing? Now a movie like Rocky and Rani will sell. Where
Yeah.
like Rani knows her shit, Rocky knows his shit, and then they're working together.
Yeah, it's about like, let's both of us sort of work this relationship out. sort of
Exactly. So when there was a lack of it, you showed it on screen, it sold. People gave money. And those things became bigger and bigger. And then instead of making one movie, they made 1,000 of those. And that's, again, the toxicity that they put in people's mind. Now you need to expect the guy to follow you. Your no might be yes. So
All that is not selling
it's
any.
not selling anymore
Yeah.
because we've unlearned all of that now. Again, we're in 2024, we've unlearned all the 90s.
Yeah.
But yes, it has affected some people where, even I would say people in the boomer generation, it'd be like, oh, does he buy gifts for you? Does he take you out? And I'm like, but I can buy gifts for myself. I can take myself out. Like, how does that define love? Right? Love is when you're actually sitting down and listening to me pour my heart out. You are there by my side through the toughest of times. You have not left me because I've had a tantrum. Love is that you don't want to fix me. You're there through my broken parts. Love is literally like you are going to help me grow. The day I can't get up and do the housework, you are going to pitch in without making it a big deal. You are helping me.
But do you think the patience of this generation, like you said so many things right now about like listening to this person, being there also when you're cranky, when you're having mood swings, or you can be wrong in a relationship, and there can be days where even the ugly side, because we all are black and white at the end of the day. And you need somebody who's okay with your blacks also, who can stand by you through your grays, blacks, and whites, somewhere or the other. So, do you think that today's generation, because someone is, you've seen somebody vulnerable, and then people tend to leave you at that point of time because,
Yeah.
That's
So that's interesting because a lot of people are always worried about being vulnerable, showing their weaknesses. Only someone who is weak will leave someone else who's weak, right? If you are strong
Yeah, I
and
think
you are sorted and you are comfortable, when someone else is weak, you will not leave them.
Yeah.
Because you know that it's not the first time. You have also been weak. It's not that no one on this earth has never been weak.
Yeah.
You've also been weak. And someone who is strong knows the journey
Yeah.
of someone who shows their vulnerability. Because you're like, bro, I've been there.
Yeah.
Of course. And I know how much it hurts, and I know the pain and I know how much courage it takes to be vulnerable. So a strong person will always stand by you. Only the weak ones will actually leave, and you don't need them.
Okay.
It's not required in a relationship to have, like, if someone's leaving you because you're vulnerable, then
Yeah.
come on, bro. That's uncool.
Yeah.
That's on them. Like, that shows their weaknesses more than yours. You are brave enough to show your vulnerability.
And you know where
He is
that-
weak to leave you.
Yeah, and you know where your relationship stands then, because when you're vulnerable, I think that's where you get to know that how
That's
long-
the loyalty test.
That's the
right?
loyalty test. Yeah,
Because
100%.
everything is not going to be happy and rosy. When if something has gone wrong and you can't even stand by me through that, then we have like till death do us apart. What are you going to do?
Yes,
Like,
100%.
what's
Yeah.
going to happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that we spoke about movies, and there are there's a one genre of movie, like you see Animal or you see Kabir Singh, where
Yeah.
the alpha male concept. What do you have to say on?
I actually saw a really cool reel, something, or video or something like that. See, now people like Andrew Tate and like this Kabir and all that, whatever, they are showing their manliness.
Yeah.
When you are taking effort to show your manliness, that's not an alpha male. An alpha male is someone who just is.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to show it.
Yeah.
Right? So something which I saw recently on the reel was like, because of Sir Ratan Tata, they were like, he is the perfect alpha male because he's kind, he's sweet, he takes care of people,
I think he has a purpose that is.
he has a purpose,
Yeah.
he gets everything done
Yeah.
without pulling you down. An alpha male pulls people down to put himself up. Like, I mean, not the alpha male, like generally, like the ones we were talking about.
Talking about, that's what I'm
The
saying.
example that we were talking about. You can't be like, even Andrew Tate, for example, he'll just be sitting on a podcast and talking shit at people.
Yeah.
When you talk shit at people, you're putting them down, na?
Yeah.
You can't pull yourself up.
By putting somebody else
Yeah,
down. Yeah.
you're pulling someone else down, so you're on top.
Yeah.
That doesn't make you an alpha male.
Yeah.
So putting in effort to be like, I am this and I am that and I am angry and I'm... Come on, dude. Like, this is a bit... then it's getting a bit too much. So you need to... It's also the person who is seeing this. Right? If you are getting intimidated by an alpha male or someone who's considering to be an alpha male, then you need to recheck what is it within you.
Yeah. Why would somebody actually attract a toxic person into their life? Where is this coming from?
So toxic people... So when somebody attracts a toxic person into their life, it's because they know how to deal with that toxicity.
They know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Example.
So when like a girl gets a boyfriend who's really angry or who has anger problems, short temper, it's because she knows how to deal with that short temperedness, right? You're not going to show your short temperedness immediately.
Yeah.
You will eventually show it when there's a bad moment, when there's anger. But there are always signs that extra charmingness and whatever. You get attracted, you're short-tempered. She knows how to deal with it. She deals and deals and deals. But why does she know how to deal with it? Is because she has dealt with it in her past. So that means someone who has grown up around toxicity learns the coping mechanisms of dealing with that toxicity, takes these coping mechanisms out into the real world,
Okay.
into their adulthood, and applies these coping mechanisms there. Whoever gets attracted, and usually it's the same kind of people.
Okay.
The kind of people that they've grown up with are the kind of people that they attract. So you will attract the toxicity in your adulthood if you've not dealt with your childhood toxicity.
Okay.
Right? So, because for you, this is normal. For you, this is the only thing that you know. Like, you dealing with the angry person in your childhood or at home was normal for you.
Yeah.
So you have brought in that normalcy into adulthood. You don't know any better. So that's why you attract the same kind of people.
Very rightly said, because I know people like you kind of attract similar sort of patterns and relationships into your life. But then how does one sort of deal with this childhood toxicity? Because how does one correct that pattern to not attract toxic relationships into their,
Yeah, adult life.
Yeah.
So I think it doesn't happen overnight.
Okay.
No mental health things happen overnight.
Okay.
The first few times, I think they will actually need to know what went wrong, like in their adult relationship. So when they have encountered the first toxic relationship, they will realize that, oh God, this was similar to my, childhood. From there, yes, then therapy does play a really big role. And even if people are against therapy or the stigma or whatever, you need to realize that if you want something different, you need to act differently. You need to change things. So nothing changes and nothing changes, right? Until you don't change, you're not going to get a changed result. So yes, they need to work on it, because see, after you become an adult, see, when you're a child, yes, then you can you can blame parents or you can blame people because you're still a minor. You're still being taken care of.
Yeah.
But once you're an adult, you can't be using your parents as an excuse. Ki, this used to happen at home. My parents abandoned me. My parents, overprotected me. And you
Yeah.
can't, because now you're an adult. You need to take responsibility of your own life. So if you're not taking responsibility of your own life and you're not making the changes personally, then you are the main character of your movie. So you want your own movie to flop. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
So yeah, because I think people have this habit that even after they sort of know about their inner child, they will sort of keep saying that, this is because of my parents, and nobody wants to sort of work on it for themselves, like being aware of how I can change things for myself somewhere or the other.
Yeah. So, I mean, now the problem is that in therapy, whenever we sit to decode something, it does come back to your childhood. Like, it does relate and decode to something in your childhood.
Okay.
So a lot of people were like, oh, now we're just going to be blaming my mom. Or when they realize that it's their mother or it's their father, then they want to blame their mother or father. That also shows lack of accountability, right? Like, why do you want something? Okay, we understand that this has happened because you were left at a supermarket once or you drowned in the ocean once or whatever. But they have done enough to like manage and take care, and they are 100% going to make mistakes. Even the perfect of perfect parenting is going to have mistakes and trauma in it. So you can't do anything about it. For you to come into therapy is for you to realize what is the issue that you're dealing with. Are you dealing with fear of abandonment? Are you dealing with lack of love? Are you dealing with this? Are you dealing with that? Because then you know how to manage your symptoms around it.
Yeah.
Right? So when people say that, okay, this has happened because of my parents, they don't want to take accountability of their life. That again shows like they're not sure about the decisions that they want to take. They are nervous about like making big decisions. Basically, lack of accountability.
And when you see this in your partner, say after you're in a relationship, in an adult relationship, and say like me, like I know about inner child and maybe I have worked, but if I can see something in my partner, how does one sort of have this difficult conversation of actually communicating about the inner child? Because you can't go and tell your partner that, oh, you're carrying this from your mom or you're carrying this from your dad, or
I mean, if you're close enough, you can say, but yeah, you can't say it every day.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
But if the love is close enough and you're strong, the relationship is strong enough, you can surely say. But yeah. So when you talk about your partner, I feel like again, you will attract the kind of partnership that you need and you want. So if you are talking about, if you are so into like mental health and inner child and anxiety and stuff like that, your partner will end up understanding. And so if you are talking about inner child anxiety and all of that, for sure your partner will somewhere be on the wavelength. And if they're completely opposite, then that could be denial also, So when you're saying like, how do you have that difficult conversation? I think if your partner needs help, you need to talk about it. You don't have to worry about how will it be taken, because yeah, it could be a difficult conversation today, but it's going to help you like for the next 10, 15 years of your life. And if he doesn't get the help that he actually needs, you are going to be a direct victim to his abused mental health.
yes.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't really need to be as difficult as like we're making it, because I think we've also come from a generation. It's like if I ask you to go get help, I'm saying that you're crazy. But if you are living in 2024, if you're legit living in 2024, then you won't really think about it that way. Because you have to understand that it's coming from a place of love. We have to explain that it's coming from a place of love. You want them to thrive so that you all can thrive together. So
And I think if that conversation sort of, shakes the whole relationship, then I don't.
It's not
think
worth it in the
it's
first
not
place.
worth
Yeah.
it in the first place. Yeah, you're very right. And you spoke about abusive, that abused relationship.
yeah.
Coming to how do you think that people sort of they get into a relationship and very late they come to know that it's an abusive relationship, especially when it's emotional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, a toxic partner or an abusive relationship, we think of it from the olden days of like did he hit you?
Yeah, it's physical. Yeah. Okay. Huh.
And even if he hit you like one time, just let it be. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, is he hitting you?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that is...
कितनी बार मारा है actually, like I have heard these conversations around me.
Yeah, it's not
And
like...
एक बार मारा है तो
तो
like
छोड़ दो, yeah,
like
it's okay.
forgive it, like जाने दो this time type.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what's the problem also, right? Like abusive relationships are always looked at as physical abuse. But there's so much to abuse. There is financial abuse.
Okay.
There is mental abuse. There's emotional abuse.
How can a financial abuse look like?
Financial abuse is when they are not sharing. So it's like one, let's just take the obvious example of when the woman is dependent on the man for every expense that she needs to make. And it's the decision is controlled by the man of whatever she needs to spend. That doesn't allow someone to actually go outside. Like, I know people I know women who cannot take care of their own fitness and physical health because their husbands will not shell out that much money for their gyms.
Okay.
So when a woman is financially dependent on a man, they can abuse that power by not allowing them to do things that will make them sane, make them happy,
Yeah.
make them normal.
Yeah.
They will always keep them under.
Yeah.
When somebody keeps them under, like in a little bit of stress. So when you don't work out, you have brain fog, you feel quite shitty inside in your body.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
So they want you to not feel good. That's manipulative, right? And that's where financial abuse comes from. That you need to ask me where you're spending and how you're spending. These are the people who can't leave abusive marriages also because they're financially dependent. And then it could also look like the other way around,
Okay.
where the man is making a lot of money when the woman is spending everything.
Yeah.
Without leaving anything in savings, without leaving anything for a rainy day, without leaving anything for the, for the man.
Yeah.
So it could look like both, and that is also really bad because that's where you're just like, I am in control, I'm higher than you. So when it's abuse, it's always like, who is higher than whom? I have control. Why does someone slap? Even if, like when a husband is slapping a wife or a wife is slapping a husband, the slap comes to show that I have more power, right? I can put you down.
I have the authority over you, sort of a thing. Yeah.
So abuse is just that. So when it comes to financial abuse also, it's like, I control the situation. You can't.
You can't. Okay.
That is financial abuse.
But then these abusive, like these traits, how do they sort of like, how can somebody see those in the beginning? Are there some...
It's very hard to actually figure out if this is an abusive marriage right in the beginning. People always take time to realize it because, as I said, we've been looking at abuse as physical abuse. Financial abuse also, eventually people like, after a year or something, they'll start to realize that like something doesn't feel right. Sometimes you just keep adjusting.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're having a hard time. Okay, I can't spend. But then you're just like, oh, but he's giving his parents money. He's not giving me money. You'll have incidents to show you the reality and then you'll realize. Then there are other things like emotional, when it's emotional abuse as well. It's always about telling you how ugly you look or how bad you are and how you make life hell and how you're the worst person in the world. And it's bringing down your emotional health, right? And this also is not something that you'll realize once or twice because like we said, that one slap, we'll just be like, okay,
Yeah.
we'll just let it go maybe. So
I had one couple, like I was talking to somebody, and when we were talking, she spoke about how under the pretext of growth, the husband kept telling the wife that you need to do better, you need to learn this, you need to do that, ये सीख ले, वो सीख ले, तेरा ड्रेसिंग ठीक नहीं, but मैं तो तेरे अच्छे के लिए बोल रहा हूँ. So somewhere or the other, these things, they might look, under the pretext of growth, that he really cares for me. But you don't know. There's a very thin line between showing someone care and that relationship being abusive.
Oh, absolutely. Some people don't even realize that when they are like even abusers don't know that they're abusing sometimes.
They
Because,
don't. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
abusers don't know that they're abusing sometimes because they're like, oh, I have been taught this. This is normal to me. I'm doing it for a betterment. But if that is hurting someone,
Mm.
like how daft are you?
Yeah.
If that's hurting someone, if the person you love is in pain because of you and your words, then there's no excuse.
Yeah.
There cannot be any excuse anymore.
Yeah.
Then comes back to what we were saying earlier of lack of accountability,
Yeah.
right? These are the people who want to blame other people that I to said it, you felt bad. What do you mean? You said it in the same space that we share, right? It's my space too. So there's a lack of accountability there. You can't just do anything and not take accountability for your words and your actions or anything. A lot of people don't realize that. And the ones who do realize it is a power move. That's what we said. And yeah, of course, it has to be masked under something. Because no one's going to come walk down the street and say, hey, I'm going to abuse you today. So abuse has to be masked under something. So growth is one of the best ways to mask it. Like, I'm just saying it for your good only, na? So you don't want to get caught as the bad person. You don't want to get caught as the wrong person. In fact, forget this. In my clients and in my stories, there are people who are actually getting physically hit on a daily basis. But then they're like, oh no, but my husband is, he said sorry. So it's all okay. Or he said that he won't do it again. Or he put cream on the wound. And that's how tightly gripped we are to our abuser also,
So, also, when you're talking about abusive relationships, okay, so you spoke about emotional abuse, spoke about financial abuse, physical abuse, of course, which is very evident. I had these one or two friends who told me that, when they got into a fight with their partner, the partner would sort of, harm himself or herself to sort of even if it's their mistake, just to sort of the whole attention would go on them, so they would hurt themselves, and that is their way of saying sorry. So it's a very, very toxic trait, according to me, what I heard. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, wait, let's just understand that first line. If you have to harm yourself to say sorry, that itself is a flawed concept altogether. So when you are harming yourself for attention, that comes to a place of like, I don't know how to say sorry. I don't know how to articulate myself. I don't know how to take accountability for something that's gone wrong. I don't know how to and it's also about making it a big gesture, na? When you make it so big, if you have harmed yourself, I can't make it about me anymore. Even though the sorry was supposed to come from me.
Yeah.
But it's not about me anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's about how you are recovering from that hurt and that harm.
Yeah.
So somewhere it's again gone back to you, and that is very narcissistic.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to make my sorry about you. You are again in the limelight, right? In this situation.
Yeah.
So these are people who don't know how to again articulate how they feel. They don't know how to take responsibility. Because what would have happened if you just said, I'm sorry, right? The other person will take time. They can't wait. They don't have that time. They want an answer right now.
Yeah.
Like as we said, it's not the reels.
Yeah.
You have to wait. You have to let another person get their emotions. You're not going to get instant results, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
And
like
also,
that.
as you said, that the importance of the whole situation, say I had to say sorry. For example, if it's you and me, if I start harming myself instead of saying sorry to you, the whole thing becomes about me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is very narcissistic, right?
Yeah.
At the end of it.
What is a narcissist exactly? How can it show up in your relationships?
Good question. I'm thinking about my ex, so.
Oh my God.
No, it's
I should
great.
be asking you, why did you attract a narcissist?
Oh, yeah, that also is great. It's great. It's great. It's great. Great question.
Yeah, we should go there also. Why do people attract narcissists also? And what is a narcissist?
It's very charming, yeah, that's why.
Narcissists,
Narcissists are very charming.
Okay.
And because of Bollywood movies, our head, right? So you're just like, oh, this guy is so cool. He has so much swag. He's so cool. And then we'll be like, then when everything becomes about him. So, okay, let's just answer the what is a narcissist? A narcissist is someone who wants to constantly think about themselves, their peace, their comfort, their happiness, the conversation also has to be about them.
Okay.
Like, say you and your partner have gone to meet a friend for the first time or like the first few time. When you're going back, you'll be like, oh, did they like me? What did they say about me? Do you think they like this joke? It's just bringing the conversation back to them constantly.
Okay.
In other ways, in different ways. Right? And when you don't get the limelight, then it's a problem. Now, when you said, why do you want to even be with a man? Why do you even get attracted to a man like this? Why would you even want to be with a man like this? Because it sounds terrifying. Why would you want to be with someone who's constantly like
About themselves.
about themselves? Exactly. So a narcissist knows how to attract the right kind of people, I guess. I think that's the right way to say it. So initially, their way of working is putting themselves a little bit second and making it all about you. Like, my life is about you. I'm so charming. I'm making you feel loved. I'm making you feel hopeful. I'm making you feel great about yourself. And now you're in the trap. And once you're in the trap, now it's all about them. And now it's about their lives and their conversation, and their topic, and their this and their that. And every time you try to leave, they'll pull you back because they know what they need to say, because you love the hope factor, you love the love factor. Right? So they throw that and then they bring you back. Right? So it's like reeling you in with the hope and reeling you in with that love. So they know the weak. Only people who love and love hope.
Who love love.
Yeah, and love charming people. They're the ones who would get very easily attracted to narcissists.
Okay.
Because that's how narcissists work. That's their first move.
But you got to be very aware about your conversations. You got to be aware. Most of the people don't even realize they are with a narcissist, and maybe a third person can.
Eventually they will. Eventually you will. Like, eventually when you're sitting in a relationship and it's all about the other person, eventually you will realize. And it's all about like, I don't know, like I've heard like really funny stories about how people are like literally on the verge of getting married.
Okay.
And the guy's like, oh, I can't do it because I have this trip coming up. I'll do it late. Like, we'll get married later because I have
We'll
this.
get married later.
Yeah, because of some trip, like a holiday or like a work trip. And you're just like, it's not all about you, buddy. You know, it'll always show, you know, oh, we can't get married now because I have like money issues. You're always going to have money issues. Money issues don't go away. Like, today you'll have money, tomorrow you won't. It's the most fluid thing in the world. But like, people who make it all about them, like the reasoning is all about them, the excuses are all about them, like, my parents, my health, my money, my work, my life.
And what is like, so if I also look back now, I think that, yeah, I have encountered a few narcissists even in my dating history. Where do you think, what kind of inner child wound do you think a person who attracts narcissists?
Oh, who attracts a narcissist?
Yeah, like
Okay.
you've dated somebody
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. I've had somebody
Yeah.
who was like that. So what is that inner child? Like, what are we seeking for then?
Love,
Okay.
abandon. So somewhere we feel like, you know, I'm not saying that we didn't get the kind of love or we were abandoned. I'm not saying that. But love is not a one-time situation. You constantly want love.
Yeah.
Right? When you are not able to love yourself the way you want someone else to love you, then you outsource that responsibility.
Yeah.
And narcissists are great at it because their first few steps are to show you how much you can be loved. And once they show you that, even a toxic relationship, like even toxic relationships have narcissists in it, like most of them. Not all, but most of them. So it's about showing you how much you can be loved. And yeah, the inner child wound is that you weren't able to give that love for yourself. So at some point, self-love was lacking. And then the moment you chose yourself over that relationship, that's when self-love went higher again.
Yeah.
Right? So now if you are able to love yourself 100%, why the hell will you take a 20% love from a narcissist?
Yes.
But before you were only able to love yourself like 10%. And some rando has come into your life and now is loving you 20%. So you're just like, yeah, cool. It's much better than what I love myself.
Yeah.
It seems like a great deal. And then you realize that you're also getting 80% shit. And that's what you can't take eventually. So you start to choose yourself. So yeah, self-love. To answer it in short.
Yeah. Also, one more thing, that when you are with narcissists, so when I encountered a narcissist in my life, I realized there was a lot of gaslighting.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't know what gaslighting is.
Yeah. So gaslighting also comes from the term where I'll say it in short, but like there was a movie years ago. I wish I can remember the time or date. If you can Google it, let me know. But there's a movie called Gaslight, which is like, I don't know, black and white, long back.
Okay.
And where the guy wanted to make sure that his wife was considered mentally ill. So what he used to do is reduce the gas from the light to make it dimmer. And every day, like a little bit dimmer. And every day she would come and she'd be like, is it getting 1944? Yeah, it's such an old film, 1944. And every day, once it started becoming dimmer, she could realize it.
Yeah.
Right? And she'd be like, do you think the light is a little bit low today? I'd be like, no, it's not. And made her believe that there's something wrong with her perception
Oh my God.
of reality while being in control of it. So that is the term gaslighting. And then eventually psychologists have picked up that word from the movie and been like, oh, he's gaslighting you. So now it's become a term, but it came from, which is exactly what I said, right? So take the classic example of a guy and girl. The guy could be gaslighting the girl into believing that what she thinks is not true, altering her reality while he's in control of it.
Got it.
Right? So, and it can go vice versa. A girl can do it to a guy as well. You know, we're like, I just saw that. And we're like, no, you didn't. Or it's in your head. Usually, like that's the biggest thing. It's in your head. It's in your mind. Right? So it's like you stop believing what you think and you start giving your life control and life decisions to other people. And that's how then they start to control you and make decisions for you.
Yeah. So even in like fights or arguments,
It's in your head.
yeah. Like even if there is something like this, I think it would just backfire. And suddenly when it's the other person's fault, like it would suddenly come back on me.
Yeah.
And I would be like, okay, what just happened? After the whole argument, I'm like, okay, something just happened out here. And you suddenly are like,
Yeah.
sab mere pe aa gaya types.
Yeah. So if even when you say something in an argument or a fight, like if you tell your partner or your boyfriend or whatever that, dude, you told me this yesterday. And be like, I didn't.
Oh shit.
And be like, I heard you. You said it. No, I didn't. Maybe you imagined it. Maybe it's in your head. And then you'll be like, did I imagine it? Like, is it in my head? And the moment you question your own reality, that means there's gaslighting them.
Interesting.
You have just been gaslit. Yeah.
I think all these new terms and the Gen Zs, sort of using.
It's the gaslighting has been there for a while. It's not only Gen Z.
Yeah, but then
Gaslighting has
with
been
Gen
there.
Zs, we have more new terms.
Yeah, no, with Gen Zs, we are saying it more. The term has been there for a while, but
Yeah,
I think we're recognizing.
it's glamorized now.
Yeah,
It's a
it's like,
talking-
yeah, now we know that, okay, 1 in 5 friends of ours are gaslighting us. Like, we are more accepting to that.
100%.
Yeah.
But what do you think the Gen Zs, like the whole, generation, I think that they're super cool, okay? They're very authentic. They know what they want. And I think it's a generation who started working on their mental health
Faster.
before they should start working on it, actually.
Yeah.
Somewhere or the other. I don't know, good, bad, I don't know
Yeah.
about that part.
Yeah.
But still, there is so much confusion when it comes to love and relationships. I mean, nobody wants to commit to one. And there are these new concepts which are coming up, like situationship, breadcrumbing. Then, yeah, like I'm finding it difficult to even keep up
Keep
with
up,
these
yeah.
lingos that they're coming up with.
Yeah, I think like situationships is the worst thing that the Gen Zs have created for sure. I mean, there are great things that they have created, but situationships are the worst because it's literally like giving you a hall pass to get away with making someone feel bad. Like, you know that person wants you, you kind of want them, you get involved, and then you'll be like, okay, see you later, bye. So just because it's become a trend doesn't mean it doesn't hurt someone else. Like in a relationship, there's always one person who's a little bit more involved than the other person. And there are phases when each relationship goes through where one person is more into the relationship than the other person. And where we know that's normal, don't take advantage of that. The fact that you're taking advantage of it is a little bit weird. And that's why I don't like situationships. But yeah, so with coming back to what you asked about the Gen Zs, they are pretty cool that way when they are very much aware about their mental health. I think there needs to be a balance which is not there yet. So which is why we can't speak for it. But I'm hoping in the next few hundred years it comes in. But like see our parents, like the boomer generation, they didn't do anything for themselves. They took all the trauma from our grandparents. They didn't do anything about themselves. Here we are now understanding mental health, maybe midlife, a little bit before that. Gen Zs have done it much earlier, right? So everyone is just learning from other people's mistakes and being like, this should not happen to me, and this should not happen to me, and this should not happen to me. We will find the balance of when you need to start, how you need to manage. But it's great that at least the topic is on the table. How we are managing it, that will take some trial and errors. And I think we should be allowed that time for trial and errors. But it's okay if it's not managed well. At least it's happening.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really great thing. At least we're talking about it. At least they are aware of their mental health. At least they are aware of...
But why are they facing issues when it comes to commitment?
Yeah, okay. So when it comes to commitment, I think that they are facing issues because the bar is so high, right? I mean, they have also raised their bar really high for themselves because earlier, you think, look at our own parents and look at our own grandparents. Where was
minimum?
Yeah, where was self-love? They don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
They think self-love is selfish at this point. They don't know what self-love is. We are still decoding what self-love and selfish means. Still, we're like, if I cross this line, it'll become self-love. If I cross this line, it'll become selfish. We are still on that hopscotch.
Yeah.
These guys have kind of figured it out, right? These guys know what self-love is. They know what selfish is. So when the bar is so high, that's when the other person needs to get a little bit higher to like, okay, now we're aligned. Now we can commit. Because then they don't want to like settle also, right? Like, why would you want to settle when you're able to understand what is life?
Yeah.
So I think because the bar is high right now, they are not able to commit.
Do you think also dating apps somewhere? Because as we started the topic, we spoke about this right in the beginning. The problem of abundance.
Yeah.
Where you have so many options. Do you think that also sort of leads to...
Okay, to me, and from whatever I've seen and heard, with dating apps, there are options, but all those options are not your options, right? Eventually, when you go to the supermarket, you'll see all of everything.
Yeah.
But for the next 5 days, these are the only 5 perishables that I can buy. You know what is suiting you. And if you can afford to buy the whole supermarket, doesn't mean you will. Right? So even with dating apps, there are a lot of options there. But even from those options, you need to know what suits you, what fits you.
Yeah.
What you vibe with.
What are you looking for ultimately?
What are you looking for?
Yeah.
So where dating apps can confuse someone, yes, it's not something... a lot of people, right, they say like, you're not going to, like Seema auntie, you're not going to get 100%. You are going to get the 60-70%, which I think is the most, I mean, the way she said it triggered the entire nation, but it's the most apt advice. You're not going to get 100% of what you want. So if you are getting that 60-70, it's great. But what people want is, I'll get the 60-70 from you, but then when I find that balance 40 in someone else, then I'm going to switch, and then I'm going to cheat, and then I'm going to find the other option, or then I'll go onto the dating app and I'll find that person with a balance 40%. So what people are not realizing is that, are you okay to compromise? Are you okay to settle for not the 100%? Which I think our generation has done that. Like the millennials and the boomers, they have compromised. So we are experts at, you know,
We understand.
settling for a little bit lesser.
Yeah.
But I don't think they have, because the bar is so high, they've not settled. So commitment becomes a little bit tougher. Which I said, there needs to be a balance for it. And I'm assuming in the next few generations, the balance will align.
Okay.
Right now, the bar is so high. For us, the bar is so low. Maybe in the next few generations, it will align.
Got it. And you spoke about cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens exactly when somebody is sort of cheating? And I've seen people who are in healthy relationships, okay? Like everything is good
Yeah.
and they're happy also in their
Yeah.
marriages. And then still there is this thing where they end up cheating.
Yeah.
So why
I
is
have
that?
seen it mainly with people who have, like, when the wives have given birth and they're busy with the child and the husbands have gone out and cheated. It's a very common pattern.
Oh.
Yeah. And then the responsibility of that comes on to the wife that, it's insane, yeah. But the responsibility comes on to the wife that, oh, in this process of having a baby, don't forget your husband, huh? Like, don't forget your husband? What are you saying? Like, you've just removed a whole ass human being from you. What do you mean don't forget your husband?
Yeah.
This is the bare minimum that he can do. But yeah, that's a very basic pattern. One second.
Yeah, even I've heard that most of the men tend to cheat when the woman is having
Yeah.
when their partner
When they're pregnant,
they're
or when they're
pregnant.
just delivered.
Yeah.
They're so into the baby, and the man is, oh my god, the man didn't get attention for 2 minutes, so he decided to go somewhere else. Like, come on.
Okay.
Right, really. So, yeah, when it comes to cheating, it's mainly about the abundance thing that we were talking about. It's like, I can cheat, so I will. I wanted these qualities in someone else and I found it. So, and it's attractive and I could not control myself, so I cheat. Or normal, like in Dubai, for example, it's very common for people to be living there without their families. Like men come to work there while their families are back home. And they just pretend that they're single. So they have,
Okay.
so they all have a girlfriend in Dubai. And then they have a family back home. It's very common in the Gulf
Oh my God.
to,
Okay.
it's insane because and the only reason is that he can do this. He can get away by doing this. So he's doing it. So I've said this many times. The only reason someone cheats is because he can cheat. Like if he physically couldn't cheat, he wouldn't.
Yeah.
There are no ethics and values holding anyone back.
Yeah.
You found the quality that you fantasized or thought about or didn't get from your partner, and you saw that in someone else. And because you can do it, you did it.
But do you think the person who is the partner who sort of finds out about cheating should be okay with it? Like,
No, so honestly, now with cheating also, there are so many, like, there's emotional cheating there also. Emotional cheating is when I've literally just been talking to you, pouring my heart out to you, telling you I probably love you and all of that. But I didn't do anything. We didn't do anything. Right? But there was emotional cheating with intent. So it always comes down to what is the intention of that cheating.
okay.
Right? So there's a lot of forms of cheating.
Cheating, huh?
Right? So when you are cheating and what in this
For the
case
other-
we'll talk about the wife in this case who finds out like my husband is cheating. So we need to understand what form of cheating it is, what is the intensity of that cheating. In what narrative has this even happened? Did someone come on to him? Did he go into someone's room? Was there intention? Was there discussion? So I think we need to sit and understand that, because if we do that, do we actually understand where our partner lies, and should we forgive him? Should we not? Is this something that can repeat? Is this something that is a problem? Because there are people who are serial cheaters also, right? Will this happen again? So I think that, I mean, everybody says once a cheater, always a cheater. That line has always been going around. But I feel like if someone has really worked on themselves and understood why they used to cheat earlier, then yeah, they can like not cheat.
Okay.
But is the other person is their current partner going to be involved and give so much time and attention to it? Because what if she has like children to take care, she has her life, her health, her parents, and if she doesn't have time for it, well and good, drop him, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you don't want,
Yeah.
your partner needs to be helping you.
Yeah.
He's not supposed to be a burden on you. The moment that happens, feel free to drop him.
Yeah. But cheating also reminds me, like, because of social media and the access that we have again to, like, it's easily accessible. I think पहले भी cheating था. ऐसा नहीं था कि पहले नहीं था, okay? Like, even in our parents' generation.
Yeah, what people used to go for work trips and all means what?
Yeah, so everything was there. It's just that now, of course, we are talking about it and people are ready to like sort of drop the relationship if it's not working out for them, sort of a thing. Now people are ready to take a stand for it because it's not a taboo to take a divorce on these grounds. But I also feel that the accessibility because of social media, like you can reach out to an ex, you can reach out to somebody you had a crush in college. It's so easy, and those conversations can lead to cheating.
Yeah.
Eventually, sort of a thing. That reminds me, I have a question. Do you think that couples should share their passwords and phone passcodes with each other? Is it healthy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't think it's a sit-down discussion. Let's just be honest. I don't think that if you are in a relationship tomorrow, you'll have to have one meeting to share your passcodes. No. I think sharing a passcodes is a byproduct of life. It's like, oh, dude, I was ordering something from this app. Can you just check where it is? And then like, I don't know your passcode. And then you just give it. This is a byproduct of being in a relationship, of living. So if it comes out from that sense as a byproduct, it's absolutely fine. But if you have anxiety one day and you have a doubt on where I am, and you come to me specifically and say, give me your passcode, then I think that's a little bit, that's like you can't control what's happening in your mind. You can't control what's happening in your thought processes. You are unable to calm your own nervous system and your own overthinking thoughts. And now you're putting it on me. You're asking me for my passcode for you to settle down in your mind. That's not okay. That's super unhealthy. So it's again the intention from which it comes.
No.
The intention is life. Right? I have to order something from my phone, please. I'm going for a shower. Can you put this on charge? Can you call my mom? Can you call what? That's okay.
Yeah. So the intention matters out here.
Intention. Yes.
Okay.
There's no like black and white rule. It's literally the intention which is black and white.
Okay.
The intention needs to be life.
But I think sometimes also like people also say, like I've had friends tell me that it's also about privacy, like phone. But on the other side, I also feel, maybe this is a very controversial opinion, that today our lives, like I say, even if we are living an offline life, we are living an online life, which is very predominantly lived. Like I think out of 100%, as 60% might be online, and the rest is 40%. Like we being on Instagram or being on these apps in general.
Yeah, or just buying coffee and water and stuff like
Everything, yeah. So our major life depends on
that.
Our digital world. So sometimes I feel that if you have a partner whom you are sort of trusting and you're inviting him into your life, you need to start sharing your digital space as well. That is what I think personally, because that's how the trust factor in a relationship.
See, if you have nothing to hide, it's not even going to be a topic of discussion. Right? This question would not have even come up if there's nothing to hide. The people who only come up with this question is because there is something to hide. right? Or even if they had nothing to hide, like I'm telling you from my experience, I probably thought I had nothing to hide. But like my ex used to go through my phone when I used to go to sleep, and this thing, yeah, exactly. I came up 2 years ago, 2 years after, and I was just like, oh, that was a little uncool. You shouldn't have done that. And like he was like, oh, this was not okay, and that was not okay, and you said this and you said that, and I'm like, yes, buddy, I am gonna talk about you behind your back. Like everyone's gonna be talking about their partner. But if you're going in to find what I'm saying about you, then that just shows your insecurity, and then also says that I don't want to be with you, right? Like
Yeah.
this is not the kind of person that I want to be with.
Yeah.
Like it was a great reminder for me to like not to drop this person and not be with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, coming back to what I'm saying is that don't abuse the power of now you have my passcode.
Yeah.
You know, it's very easily abused by people. So I don't think this question would even come up if there was really nothing to hide.
Yeah.
And even if you didn't have anything to hide,
Hmm.
then someone has abused it, and then that's also uncool.
Yeah. One of the most asked questions also is that should people sort of stay in touch with their ex?
Ooh.
What do you think?
No, I don't think that people should stay in touch with their ex after like the relationship has ended,
Hmm.
because he's still not your ex. He's still you still share the same emotion. It's not a flip. The switch doesn't flip immediately.
Okay.
You can be. When I was saying that, I'm not sure if people should be in touch with their ex immediately after the relationship, because he's still not changed the way. I mean, it's not a switch, right, that you flip. Like the feelings don't go away. Like you'll still feel as intensely as you felt in the relationship. I think if time passes and you all both grow in different directions and you both grow as people, then being in touch with your ex kind of makes sense, because you're like, okay, this is the person who knew me in 2020, or this is the person who knew me when I was like 20 years old or 25 years old, and keeping in touch for those reasons is different. But if you've broken up and then the next day you're like chilling, that staying in touch doesn't make sense, because your feelings don't just go away.
Yeah.
And then mistakes can happen. And mistakes is what people think as mistakes. Mistakes can happen. So yeah, I think like, also, if you can try and avoid it, avoid it. If it is uncomfortable in your life and your relationships, do it. But I know a lot of people who want to stay in touch with their ex, because those are the people who like symbolize the relation, the person that they used to be, or the change or the growth that they have brought into their lives. So if it does, it's fine. But then the intensity is not like, it's not like you're my best friend. You know, it's like, okay, I'll meet you once a year on my birthday or your birthday, and that's okay. So the intensity matters, the timeline matters,
Yeah.
the intention matters.
Yeah.
So if these three things are sorted, I guess.
Yeah, like if you've gone through a breakup, I think immediately it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't
You need to like sort of space it out.
Then you're just fooling yourself.
Yeah.
If you're immediately going to be like, oh, from tomorrow we are friends. Today we're lovers, tomorrow we're friends. Then you're just fooling yourself.
Yeah, that's not possible.
No,
Yeah. Also, when we're talking about dating and relationships, we come to marriages in India. What do you think what is the current situation?
with marriage.
Marriages, yeah. Because now you have different kinds of marriages. You have open marriages. You have so many
Different, yeah.
combinations.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as it was. And
But even when it was simple, it was not simple. You know, even marriages, when it was like love and arrange, it was never simple. Like I have spoken about this on my podcast before, where, you know, a lot of people used to get married. A lot of people used to get like arranged marriage.
Hmm.
You're not going in with the intention of love, right? You're going in because of the intention of arrangement. I need to make sure that I provide for my wife. I take care of my family. If love comes and love goes, doesn't matter. The marriage doesn't break, because you're doing it for that commitment of, oh, I will take care of you.
Yeah.
I will take care of my children. Right? So a lot of arranged marriages used to not break when in the past. Even currently in India, also a lot of arranged marriages don't break. More love marriages break, because you get inside that marriage for love, and then once love is out, then you exit the marriage. With arranged marriages, doesn't matter. Love comes, goes. It's a sad thing, but you are getting into it because of a commitment, right? A commitment of I'll take care of you and you will just be my companion. No love, or love is not on the cards.
Yeah.
If it happens, then it's great.
Yeah.
So marriages in India especially it's becoming a little bit difficult in the sense where people will say difficult because we're hearing more divorces.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think it's a bad thing. Like, I just feel like it's okay. I mean, like, even as like for your mental health, if you think this person was great for you for like 15 years, then great. Look at that as success. Why are we looking at that as failure? That, okay, 15 years later, my marriage failed. You could be with someone else for the next 15, 20 years, like, it's not bad. It's okay.
It just did not work out after that period.
Yeah, but when it
and I
did-
think we need to, it worked out then, and now if it is not working,
And when it did, it was great. So why don't we just celebrate that? Why don't we celebrate the fact that we have grown apart and we are aware of the fact that we've grown apart? Like, celebrate that. Like, we again know we've said this before in the podcast where our parents' generation, they are lugging each other around at some point, right? People have grown apart, but you can't get divorced. It was too complicated then.
Yeah.
The stigma, the financial decision, bringing children up, and it was so complicated that it was so difficult to get divorced.
yeah.
Today, because you can get divorced, people look at it as, oh, now it's so difficult to get married, but kind of also makes sense. If you're not happy, you're not happy. What's the point? You're going to stay till you're 60 unhappy or what?
Yeah. But what about open marriages?
So open marriages, so a lot of people feel like they are, so what we spoke about, that you get that 70% from your wife, but they also crave that 30%. And then they would cheat. So back in the day, it was called cheating.
Cheating, yeah.
Right? Here in an open marriage, they kind of talk about the fact that I crave that 30%, but I'm not craving it from a place of, I want to commit to that 30%. I want to experience that 30%. So I think once you're aware about what the intentions are, so with an open marriage and polyamorous and queer relationships and all of that, everything needs to be discussed. Communication needs to be more open in those things, right?
Okay.
Because you don't know. Here that the rule book is kind of defined. We keep changing the definition, but there is a slight definition of it. There you need to check, like, okay, I'm happy with the 70% that is there in our relationship. I crave the 30%. And for that, I probably will go outside. What is it? Like, the husband and wife decide together. Like, do we go on one date separately outside? Do we they define their relationship.
Okay.
So, does it last? Does it not last?
What is the success of an open marriage?
That is something I'm not sure, because I don't think we have enough data for that, because it's such a new concept, right? We're not going to just dismiss it without anything, right? I mean, by saying a new concept, like, I think like in the olden days, people were kind of in open marriages only. It was just, they didn't want to admit it.
But sometimes I also feel like if there's like a partnership, sort of a husband
Yeah.
and a wife, okay,
Yeah.
and say the wife wants an open marriage, example, and the husband is new to this whole concept, and maybe, okay, he is tolerating this concept, if I would like to say that, okay, fine, let's give it a
Because
shot.
you
and
want
maybe
it,
because
yeah.
you want it. And do you think that these, even if sometimes you want it for a temporary period, but they do leave a mental baggage
Yeah.
somewhere,
Yeah.
and it can fuck up your emotions
Absolutely.
and fuck up your present life
Yeah,
later on?
Yeah, so you have to be on the same page when it comes to these things. Any of this, you want to be polyamorous, you want to have an open marriage, you want to see other people, it has to be open, and it has to be with intention, and it has to come from a place. It's not that I'm telling you. It can't come from that. And eventually you're going to find out that it's not coming from a place of, I'm like, are you not completely on board? Are we not on the same page?
Yeah.
You will be able to tell.
Yeah.
It might not be on day 1, but on like day 10 or day 50, you will figure it
You'll
out.
figure it out. Yeah.
And yes, so to do this, You have to be on the same page. You have to be on the same page because anyways, you're pushing the boundary a little bit more. We don't have much data around it. It seems like it's working for the people who they're doing it for. So it's so limited.
It's not
the
out
knowledge.
there,
Yeah, the knowledge is so limited that if you do want to do it, you need to be so strong. Your relationship needs to be so strong that you're literally waking up and choosing each other on a daily basis, and then be like, because see, if your marriage is open, your relationship is open, you can choose someone else, na? But you still decide that this is my primary partner, this is my main partner. So that's how strong the relationship needs to be. That I get up and choose you on a daily basis. I don't need to be with you. There's no need. There's no like I has to.
Do you think that even these relationships are increasing, like these complex relationships are somewhere increasing because of some wounds, or is it just now more spoken about, like, or
Yeah, I think it's more spoken about, but yeah, it could be a wound as well because see, why would you want to be in an open relationship? It's because you want more freedom. And if you want more freedom, where is the lack of freedom coming from? Like, where did you feel like you were enclosed and you didn't have freedom or you didn't have what you wanted to get? So every relationship that we choose comes from a wound. Sometimes the two wounds together work together also. Just because you're a wound doesn't mean that you have to be fixed as well. You know, if you're wounded and if you are wounded on your left leg and the other one's wounded on their right leg, together you all are balancing the world, you all are walking. You're fine. You know, but as long as you also know how to be just with your left leg when you're solo and that person knows just to be with their right leg. So it's okay. Two wounds can be together. And it can be a beautiful life. And you don't have to constantly be fixed all the time. Right? So, and that's the same thing with open marriages, right? It must be coming from a childhood wound. Doesn't need to be fixed. Probably not all the time. But yeah, the only time you actually need to work on your mental health and the childhood wounds is when it starts negatively affecting you.
okay?
And negatively affecting the people around you and your relationships around you. That's when you know that you have to work on it.
Okay. So thank you so much, Aditi.
Thank
I think it was a great episode.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to help so many people who are watching this show. And thank you so much once again for being on Raw.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. If you guys loved this episode, do not forget to share it with your loved ones. Till then, keep rising and embracing in love. And do not forget, I roar you.